I plan all of our alumni and donor engagement events for athletics, anything from our fundraising auction to an alumni weekend while hosting alumni back on campus. And then I also run our communications to our donors and our social media platforms and a little bit of everything in between. So thanks for joining us today.
And Haley, what about you?
Sure. So, hi everyone. My name is Haley Ross. Just a quick thank you to Delaney and for y'all for being here. I'm excited to speak to you all. I don't think any of us are really deemed COVID-19 strategy experts yet, so just excited for the conversation to come out of this. So for those who don't know, Towson University is a public university. We have about 24,000 undergrads. We're situated just 10 miles north of Baltimore. On the athletics side, we have about 500 student athletes, 19 Division I programs. So for me in particular, I've been with Towson. This will be my 6th season, which is hard to believe. I started as a graduate intern with the Tiger Athletic Fund. I then moved into the role of the Director of Annual Giving. I did that for about 2 years, and my current role is the Assistant AD for Marketing and Development Strategies. So kind of my duties in particular, you know, of course they range all over, but basically responsible for branding, telling the story, researching kind of who we're talking to, and pushing out those communications.
Yeah, and the reason that Beth and Haley are on this panel is, as Haley mentioned, not that they know everything there is to know about how we're going to handle a fall 2020 where there isn't sports, not in the way that we've had it traditionally. But they are here because they've done some amazing ThankView campaigns, and I'm going to highlight those. We're actually going to watch through both Miami University's video and Towson's University, their video as well. Just they're quick videos, like 1 minute and 30 seconds. So we're going to watch those, and then we're going to dive specifically. We're going to start with questions about those campaigns. I think it's a really great way to start concretely and then building out to maybe broader questions like, what do we do now? So starting concrete and then building off that. And then we're going to end with questions for you guys as well. The very final question I'm going to ask our panelists, and then I'm going to throw it out to you guys as well. So this is definitely a conversation. We're kind of a smaller crew today, so if you'd like to access to your microphone when we get to that Q&A portion, feel free to just type that in the comment section or in the Q&A section, and we're definitely able to give you access to that. For some of these questions, I know it might be easier to just speak instead of type. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into the videos themselves. We're going to start with Miami University and just go ahead and watch through this video here.
Dear Miami family, I hope all of you are doing good and staying safe. We live in difficult times. More than ever, it is important to work together and support each other. In the name of the field hockey program, we want to send you a message of support. We're going to find a way to finish with this situation, and we'll come back better and stronger. Stay positive and keep fighting. We will rise up again. I'm in Oxford with my 2 kids, Shabby, Ian, and my wife, Kelly. Almost all of our student athletes are at home. They and their families are reporting to be in good shape, and as the rest of us, they're handling the situation as good as they can. Under the present restrictions, they have been very disciplined and creative to stay mentally and physically strong while keeping up with their classes. The team was having a very good spring season. Our 17 student athletes of the spring roster were showing great progress on their athletic development. For many years, we have been working hard to create a solid team culture. I'm confident that this team culture is going to help our program to keep growing, even under the current situation. We'll be ready for next season, and we will come back stronger. Thanks everybody for your unconditional support to Miami and its athletic department. We're proud of our Miami family. We're proud of you. Love and honor.
A really great video, and I chose this one specifically to kind of contrast with Townsend's, which is from a student. So we have staff and a student video as well. So let's go ahead and hop into next video here.
My name is Javon Fields, and I'm a rising junior on the Towson baseball team. On behalf of Towson Athletics, I just wanted to thank you for your recent donation. Your donations will go a long way as we continue to face challenges of COVID-19. I'm very excited to get back to school to get my academics back in. I cannot wait to get back on the field to start training again. Hopefully we can catch up sometime next season. Until then, be safe, be healthy, and as always, go Tigers.
Awesome. So kind of weird to jump in and then silently sit for 2 minutes and watch videos. So apologies for that, but I wanted to make sure as we answered questions about these videos that you guys knew what this looked like. So it wasn't a abstract, what was this video? What did it look like? So let's go ahead and hop into our first question. And this is one for both of you guys. I'm curious to know, before these campaigns, had you used ThankView before? Was this your very first ThankView campaign? If so, how easy was it to get started with ThankView? And I'm gonna let Beth, you can kick us off here.
Yeah, so we have been using ThankView at Miami for a while. It is a resource that our development staff, athletics development, uses through advancement, not through the athletic department necessarily, but we benefit from, working with both teams, advancement and athletics. So advancement uses it for our day of giving in August every year. So we use it very often for thank you messages from student athletes or from coaches. Very much like Haley's school's team just showed, we have done those before. But before this campaign, specifically that you all had seen, that was about the extent that we used it for, was thank you videos.
Yeah, and what about you, Haley? Was this the very first dive into ThankView, or were you a pro before this?
Definitely not a pro, self-admittedly, still pretty new to the platform. But our, kind of like Beth said, our advancement team on the university side, they've been using ThankView for, I think, maybe 2 years. And they have actually sent videos kind of on our behalf, but this was really our first, since COVID, just kind of our first experience kind of stewarding and using it on our own. Prior to this thank you video, actually, we're all trying to be creative with how we're engaging with our donors. And we thought it would be a good idea, just like the Miami video, for our head coaches to send out an update. So prior to this thank you that you all just watched, we actually asked and encouraged our head coaches to either volunteer themselves or a student athlete to give an update to their program. So still pretty new, like I said, but the more that our coaches are now familiar with how ThankView works, we'll definitely use it more moving forward.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into the next question. And Haley, you can speak both about the coach's appeal and the student ThankView when answering these questions. You can pick which one you want to go with. But I'm curious to know how you decided the recipients for this campaign, who was going to get this video, and why you were sending to that group in particular.
Yeah, so for this video in particular, this was actually the second thank you video. We had actually sent one out in alignment with our end of year appeal, which we call Finish Strong. So we encourage our renewals, people who haven't made their gift yet towards the end of the year to, finish strong, just like our athletes. So our first thank you video went to them as gifts came in, kind of thanking them right away for finishing strong and helping our athletes to finish strong. So that was so well received that we decided to kind of continue with the thank you video, but switching up the message a little bit. So the video that you just watched from Javon, we started maybe mid-July. So we tweaked the messaging a little bit to cater more to, they're excited to get back to school, looking forward to welcoming people back to campus soon before we heard the news of fall. So for us, really, this campaign just was purely to say thank you for all gifts coming in online. So yeah.
And Beth, what about for Miami?
Yeah, so right when COVID hit and we all started working from home, we hadn't really sent any messaging out to anybody, whether it was alumni, donors, fans, for a while. And we had a big event coming up, which was our auction in April, and we moved that to be virtual. So to kind of tie in two messages, we asked all of our head coaches to film themselves or somebody at home videotape them. And we had, like you guys just saw, Coach Puzo, he's our head field hockey coach. So we took his video and sent it to all field hockey alumni and field hockey donors. So it was more of a team update, how everybody's doing, and just a nice check-in for those recipients. So that's how we chose the recipients there.
And did you get videos from each of the coaches? Were you able to split the sports out individually, or were there some that had a double up?
So we got a video from every head coach to send to every
Amazing.
alumni base, which was awesome. So, and like Haley said, you know, coaches, I think once they kind of see and maybe they receive a thank you one, they kind of see how unique and different of a thank you it is. So they hop on board pretty quick, I would say.
And that leads into the next question. These are all going to blur together, I feel like, but it sounds like for Miami, the video idea came like, we want an update from the head coach of each sport. But I'm curious, for those coaches, were you giving them scripts? Were you giving them talking points? How did the video come about?
Yeah, so this video came about just like I said, you know, we hadn't talked to our alumni base or donors or whatnot, and we felt it was about time. You know, we reached out because of how abruptly things stopped happening. So we didn't give them a script. We just more gave them like a bullet point list of, okay, we want you to hit, you know, what the team is up to now, how you're doing, acknowledge, you know, the health and safety of who you're talking to, and then, you know, just a thank you for continued support. And we didn't necessarily ask the coaches to call out our event that was coming up. So I don't know if you noticed, under our video was like 1 or 2 sentences that our event had changed. Click here for more information.
Yeah,
so that
we
didn't rely on the coaches to pass that message along, but it was subtle enough where we knew we could get it out to a lot of people easily.
And Haley, how did the videos, either for the appeals with coaches or even getting videos from students themselves, how was that process?
So I'll kind of touch base on the appeals from our coaches that we had sent earlier in the year. So, you know, as fundraisers, especially in athletics, we're very focused on the student athlete experience. So what better way to speak to our athletes and really show, you know, who they're supporting than putting them on camera and letting their personality kind of come out. So, you know, everyone's getting emails, everyone's, you know, reading things these days. So we thought kind of ThankView would break through the noise. Let's get our coaches on video. Let's get our student athletes on video. So it was just really about getting creative. That's really how this idea came about. And then we also kind of experimented. We were getting major gifts in as well. We were getting gifts $1,000, $5,000. So we actually asked specific athletes to make a video for those particular donors. So saying like, you know, thank you Kirkland family for helping us out. So those were so well received that we had the time and the capacity to then, you know, not necessarily make all videos personal, but we had the resources to thank every gift as they were coming in.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I know personalized video is what we push for because we've seen what kind of responses you can get from that, but it also is kind of a daunting feat as well. If you are, you know, working with a staff of 2 people, you're like, okay, love the idea. How do you get started? Was that something that you were using maybe like the video request feature for, or you were reaching out to students via like email? How are you getting those videos as well?
We were honestly just texting them, and I have an iPhone, and you know, they can send a 3-minute video without an issue. And then I became a little Steven Spielberg over COVID and learned how to edit using iMovie and put music in the background and that kind of thing. So, you know, we just asked them to keep it as simple as possible, sent them a little script, and then we kind of did the artsy stuff behind the scenes.
Nice. And this kind of goes through what was involved with filming there. So I think we've touched on all the aspects there, except Haley, I would love to know with the like iMovie editing, was like the logo and the names, those were something that you added in after the fact?
Yeah, so what's great about ThankView is all you have to do is upload the video. So you can use any like editing software that creates kind of the file format that you all accept. So by using iMovie, I could upload kind of like the titles that you all were seeing. And I'm a graphic design artist.
Ooh, hello.
He didn't like that answer. But I practice graphic design all the time. So I was just experimenting with, you know, what we could do and how we could kind of mesh all the capabilities of all the programs at once.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And one final question before we move on to a new topic and move past the video itself. I'm curious, what was in the approval process of a video? Was it just you guys, Haley, you cut it, you looked at it, it was ready to go, or was there a group of people that you kind of sent tests out to as well? I don't know, Beth, do you want to take what the approval process looks like?
Yeah, so our development team there's 4 of us, and the other 3 other than me are development officers. So they are all liaisons to each sport. So every sport has a development liaison. So it's really simple. When we have a project like this, I can task them with, here's what you need to ask your coaches. And then when you get it, send it to me. So each liaison got the videos from their head coaches, and then our supervisor, we made sure he saw all of them before they went out, just so that, you know, more than 2 sets of eyes were on these videos. But really simple, just me, the liaison, and our supervisor. And then I would did all the back end work with uploading the lists and actually sending the videos out. But no major, you know, up to, you know, the ladder to get these approved. So
That's nice. There were like 10 different seals that needed to stamp it before. What about you, Haley?
Very similar, a small TAF team. And since this isn't, you know, broadly broadcasted, we could kind of be creative and make it our own. But word of advice to everyone who's listening is just be sure that there isn't something going on in the background that maybe us as development officers don't know about. Just so, you know, as COVID was unrolling, you know, Stanford was cutting programs, Ivy Leagues were cutting programs. So we actually just like kind of waited on our messaging just to be sure there wasn't something like in the background that was going on that, you know, once we push this video out, you either confuse people or you upset people. So not really an approval process, but just making sure you have all your information correct.
Yeah, which I'm sure is quite a feat as things change daily now. So just being timely with the messages, excellent piece of advice. Speaking of time, I didn't plan that, but it's so perfect. Why did you send on the date and the time that you did? Was there any specific reason for the season? Beth, you said you had an event that was coming up, so that kind of dictated it. But was there any other reason you're like, oh, Fridays? We know Fridays is when we get the open rate. I'm curious to see if you have any background info for that.
We honestly, with every head coach sending us videos, we made our own like schedule just amongst our staff of, okay, you know, Monday, Wednesday, Friday of this week, we're going to send these to you. We didn't want to send every single one on the same day because they did go to every sport alumni base and to donors who donate to that. So there were people who could have received more than one of these videos. So we just made sure we staggered them within like a 2-week time frame. And if one coach got us their video early when they were supposed to go next Wednesday and the coach from Monday didn't do theirs, we were very flexible with that. It was just making sure we didn't send out more than like 2 to 3 a day within a 2-week time span.
Gotcha. And Haley, was there any specific reason for the dates and times that you've sent these, or similar, just kind of being mindful of events going on?
Yeah, that, and then addition, we, you know, a lot of time and effort goes into making these videos. We didn't want it to seem like instant, you know, like you make a gift and we send you a video automatically. You know, I wanted it to feel like we took the time to create these after your gift came in. So I didn't want it to feel like an automatic response. So we kind of got into a rhythm of checking we get gift receipts every morning from the day before. And it has all the metrics that we need to upload into ThankView to share these videos. So we would upload them in the morning and then usually schedule them for that night. So it was always within 24 hours, but it was never like instant right away. So that's
awesome.
Kind of, yeah, our thinking with timing.
Very cool. And now we're kind of jumping back, so moving away from specifically these campaigns. And this is a question for everyone who is not a panelist, everyone in the audience here. We'd like to know kind of what is your university specifically doing with fall 2020 athletics? Is postponed, canceled, TBD? I'd love to know kind of where everyone's coming from. And I'll let Haley kind of speak to what Townsend's official fall 2020's calendar is going to look like.
Sure. So back in July, we're part of the CAA conference. So the CAA announced that they were suspending fall sports. They kind of let us decide on what the fate of football was going to be, but our athletic director decided football would also be postponed. So we're looking at different scenarios for playing in the spring, but of course, as time goes on, that'll be the ultimate factor on whether that can happen or not. We also started school last Monday, so a little over a week ago, and we started in a 85% hybrid on-campus/online model. So we allowed 25% of our residence halls to have students. And unfortunately, 2 days into the semester, we had a surge in cases. So our president made the difficult but necessary decision to ask people to leave the residence halls. So that's kind of where we stand now. But we have gotten the green light to keep our athletes on campus if they'd like. So it definitely helps us with our fundraising causes, and to really say, our student athletes are still working hard. We're still providing them with resources if they decide to remain on campus.
What about Miami?
Yeah, so Miami is part of the Mid-American Conference, and we were the first to postpone fall sports, including football. So the company line is postponed with the intent to play in the spring. So that is ingrained in all of our brains right now. When it comes to classes being on campus, we are completely virtual right now, but that definitely did not stop those who have off-campus housing to move back on campus. So there are a lot of students back on campus. Right now, it's about half and half with student athletes, just kind of up to them at this point, same as Haley. So, but it is nice, to be able to keep our donors in the loop that, there are students here that we are providing for, and even the ones at home with school starting, they still have their academic resources and whatnot virtually, so.
I'm curious, this is something that's come up before as far as just being tactful when asking students for videos, just understanding that they're also going through a weird time of going back to school, and how frequently are you asking students for videos? How are you asking students for videos? Is it coming from the coaches themselves? I'd love to know more for both of you guys, how you've gotten the students from, or videos from students rather. So I'll let Beth, if you want to jump on that.
Yeah, so we recently had our Day of Giving, which required a lot of ThankView videos. We get over 3,000 gifts as a university as a whole that day, and we send a thank you out to everybody that day. So it's a huge take on, but our whole advancement team kind of volunteers to become a ThankView expert for the day. And so I kind of led those videos for athletics, and usually on campus, it's easy to, schedule student athletes to come to the office throughout the day and get personalized, like Haley was talking about, thanking Beth Babillo for your gift to X program or whatever. So we did some pre-recorded stuff so that everybody received a video that day. So we had every sport represented by a student athlete. So when I went about getting those videos, I first asked the coach, and it kind of just ends up being up to the coach. Sometimes they just send me the contact information and say, oh, text them, call them, or they'll put us in an email together, or they'll just schedule it and then tell me. So it just really depends on the coach. But I always go to the coach first and then kind of take their lead. But then that day there was when there were larger gifts made, like $500 and up, I reached out to the coach with the names of those people and said, can we get some thank you videos to use on ThankView? And then they just sent it to the student athletes, and then they sent it directly to my phone. Most of the time it's texting with the student athletes, but always to the coach first, and then usually to the student athlete after that.
What about you, Haley? Is that kind of a similar system, or you guys have a different system for reaching out to students?
Very similar. We try to get the coaches on board first, and that usually helps with some sort of accountability too. It's like, oh, you know, the Tiger Athletic Fund needs you. You know, the coaches is asking for your help as well, and they don't want to disappoint the coach. They can disappoint us. But we also, yeah, we also this year we started hopping in on what we're trying to hop into every team's like initial meeting, virtual meetings, just so we can introduce ourselves. Outside of the ThankView videos, we tried as best as we can to get to as many home games as possible. So, you know, we're always these random people dressed to work, you know, on their sidelines, and they might not know who we are. So starting this year, we are introducing ourselves, just saying who we are and what role we play for them. And that has kind of allowed us to put a name to a face too. So when we do ask for their help, whether it's a thank you card or a thank you video, they kind of have a background knowledge of why they, you know, why it's important that they're helping us. We're not just asking, you know, for a video to just ask for a video. It's meaningful and purposeful, and we value their time that they're committing to us.
No, that's a really incredible idea. You no longer are this faceless, nameless blob, but like actual people, just, you know, making the story of each of the student athletes heard. So I think that's an incredible piece of advice there. And then this is the big kahuna question, and you guys can take this any way that you want to go, but it is kind of the reason we're all here. How are you communicating differently? And this can be with students, and we touched on that just a little bit just now, alumni and donors, and then of course to the public as well. What's changing for you guys this fall? And that can be something that specifically came to mind as everything was canceled or postponed, and you're like, oh, we have to do this differently, or kind of brick by brick, everything has to be a little bit different this year. So I'm gonna let Haley, I'm gonna bat this one to you first and see, you can take that any which way that you'd like to go.
Sure. I think, you know, people are just hungry for updates right now. I think initially what we heard, especially with season tickets and donations, it was like, why I can't see the return on my investment. So, you know, what is the reason that I'm giving to you? So I think we took that to heart, and we really tailored all of our communications to really update our constituents on, yeah, our student athletes are at home, or our student athletes can't practice, or our student athletes aren't traveling, but your support still supports them in these various ways. So in addition to that, most of our communications have just been updates. We haven't really enacted any full-blown solicitation or appeals. But with those updates, we usually offer a soft ask, like here's what's going on, but here's how you can help if you want. So I think that's just kind of like the general idea. And for me, you know, I usually have a communication plan a year in advance. And unfortunately, we just can't do that with how things are changing. So we're really operating on like a 30, 60, 90-day plan instead of operating from, you know, a year out. And nobody wants to do all that work just for it to be kind of squashed down. So just operating kind of on a smaller window and working back from there.
Beth, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, so like Haley said, you know, everyone just wants updates right now. So a huge thing for us is how can we just keep our fan base and donors and alumni engaged with our department. And so this has just included a lot of social media. Just, you know, every Friday is Rare Red Friday, or every Monday is Miami Monday, and an email and social posts and web posts go out, which is kind of like, here's what's coming up this week that you might want to see on social media, whether it's videos from coaches or student athletes, maybe something that us development are doing. And so really just trying to keep everybody engaged. So with that every Monday email or the simple posts on social media, you know, that just can engage a fan really easily have been really important. And then when it comes to just development specifically, you know, we haven't really been putting specific solicitations out there other than our day of giving. So that was a huge push for like a week and a half, but we didn't really hype it up for as long as we usually would have, just with obviously the current situation that everybody is currently in. So just engagement as much as possible on social media, I think, is really where we rely on that a lot.
Yeah, and that's a tricky line. Haley, I like your idea of there's always the opportunity to give. You don't have to go search a website to find that donation link. It's right there if you would like to give, but making sure that like updates are the forefront of that message. I'm curious to just kind of pull in, how often are you sending thank yous? If this is something you're sending to thank for every gift, every, you know, Haley, you mentioned, you know, every day you're pulling that list. Is there a certain number that you're like, oh, we want each donor to get X number of thank yous? Or is it just looking at that 30, 60, 90 plan and seeing where thank yous fit in there?
Exactly. In addition to the thank you video that we send out daily, which right now we're kind of working on the next wave. Javon's is the one that we're pushing out now, but obviously our student athletes are in school now. So we're actually working on another recording now. So while that's kind of happening, we also think it's time for our coaches to probably send another update. They haven't reached out to their fans or donor bases in a while. So again, maybe asking them to do some of the work for us. There's only so much the Tiger Athletic Fund can say, but putting that on their plate and picking a day within 30, 60, 90 for them to push that out.
Yeah, and Beth, you kind of already touched on this a little bit with social, but what are the channels that you're focusing on? Is it email? Is it text? Is it social is kind of first and foremost at the moment? Just kind of what emphasis you're putting on different channels.
So when it comes to email, our department has a every Monday email, but then development, we have a end of the month newsletter. So we try to keep a couple of fresh ideas in there, but also maybe recap a couple of things that have been going on throughout the month. And then in addition to that, just like Twitter and Facebook, the text platform, we don't use that a lot right now, but then ThankView, we have some coaches that like to use it. We do have every sport, for the most part, sends a monthly newsletter to their alumni base. And there's some coaches that would rather just film themselves at their house right now for 2 minutes, giving the update rather than typing out a message. And it's just more their personality. So we kind of go with that. So when coaches do opt into that, you know, ThankView is the best platform. We tell everybody that we have available to us to do that, because you don't have to link it to YouTube or embed it in an email. It's just right there when you open the email. So that's what we are working on.
Yeah, and I think it's a great video, but one of my favorite parts is just the dog walking in the backyard in the background. So it's very personal. It's very real. It's
very honest to what was happening in everybody's life at the time.
Yeah. Let's see. I am curious to know any upcoming ThankView campaigns. Some of them you've mentioned are ongoing, but is there anything like a virtual event that's coming up? Any other ways that you're thinking that might fit a ThankView campaign? And I'll let Haley take it from here.
Sure. So I kind of explained already what's in the pipeline for us in terms of campaigns, but I also think that we've learned how great ThankView can be as like a prospecting tool. So we can send out a thank you to thousands of people, and using the metrics that we see, people viewed, people clicked, we can either send that to our ticket team for a follow-up for them, or, you know, just as development officers, just see if there's any names that we don't recognize, people who are interested in what we're sending them. So just using it and seeing how it can be a good prospecting tool definitely will be in the future.
Here at Miami, we didn't necessarily have anything upcoming because we just finished a huge campaign with our Day of Giving. But as Haley was talking, I wrote down, she said, you know, it might be a good time for coach updates. So I think that's going to be on my next list too.
Nice. And this is a very similar question, so we can kind of breeze past it. And then I think the very next one is our last question that we're going to throw to the audience as well. But you had mentioned updates is kind of the biggest thing at the moment. Is that, do you see that being the case throughout the fall as things are changing so rapidly? Or are there ways that you're going to branch out into maybe more solicitation and using it a little bit differently as well? And Beth, I'll let you answer this one.
Yeah, so right now it's just updates and thank yous when, you know, that comes about. But we do have a couple things coming later in the fall in November that, you know, and some events that we could definitely utilize ThankView for. So I just think, you know, thinking about using ThankView more than just the updates and actually thanking people. It's, you know, ThankView can be used for more than just thanking. So I think that's something that people don't realize all the time. So, because at a previous institution, I know they had ThankView, but we didn't really ever use it. So I do think it's a great tool to use outside of thanking people and updates at this time, at least.
And Haley, if there's anything else you want to add to that, I know it's kind of a very similar question to the last one, so feel free to take it if you'd like.
Yeah, and I kind of touched on it earlier, but using these videos is just a great way to kind of break through the noise. I think a lot of news coming out of higher ed is kind of negative right now, but you know, it's just a direct way to show donors or people who are interested in Towson athletics, like, here's a real student athlete, like on campus, thriving, positive, optimistic for the future. So it's just kind of like, you know, you can use ThankView just to be as personal and as real as possible, which is kind of needed right now.
Oh, and with that, we are into the Q&A. I am going to launch my poll here to see where you guys are coming from as far as what you're thinking of using ThankView for, if it's going to be updates, if it's going to be solicitations as we move further in. So that poll is up there now. Feel free to go ahead and drop in your answers. I'm just curious to know where everyone's coming from there. And Jamie asked, is anyone doing anything specifically for homecoming this year? I don't know if Haley or Beth, you can speak to that at all, or if there's anyone else in our chat, if you want to drop in what you have planned, if it's going to be completely virtual, if it's happening or being canceled.
I know that just with football season being postponed to spring, that our alumni association is working on something. I'm not 100% sure what that is, but they do want to include athletics in that just around the time that it would have been, just to, again, keep alumni and fans and donors engaged. So we're not exactly sure what that looks like for homecoming specifically yet, but we will see.
We are in the exact same boat. But I will say that they are emphasizing the home in homecoming. So I'm sure we'll be seeing that a lot of things virtual for sure.
And that is the first of what I hope is many questions. So if you have any questions for Beth and Haley, feel free to drop those in the chat or in that Q&A box, either one, manning both of those. And I said earlier, if you prefer just using your microphone, they are not enabled at the moment, but I can make that happen if you're interested in just speaking rather than typing. But while everyone is coming up with their questions, I did have a few additional ones that came in prior to the webinar, just questions that we get pretty frequently, and then specifically for athletics, as this fall is going to be crazy. So the very first one that I got from a current ThankView partner was, how do you manage your donor data? If that's something that you work with specifically, if you have a data point person on your team, if you submit requests, what is that flow to get the information that you need to send to ThankView? And Haley, you kind of touched on it a little bit as far as pulling those donation lists. So I'll let you go ahead and kick it off.
Sure, and another beautiful thing about ThankView, especially for us, is we don't have to put in a formal data request with our university advancement team to send out ThankViews. So we have lists kind of in-house of all former athletes, and we have lists of donors. So For these specific thank you campaigns, we can kind of work around the system there. But for anything large scale that doesn't have to do with ThankView, we have to submit a formal data request, a communication date request, just so everyone's in the loop. And kind of like Beth said, it's important to know who's talking to who when, so it's not like spam all at once.
When it comes to our data, we don't manage it necessarily, the big database, but when we get updates from specific donors or alumni, or maybe a coach is in contact with a handful of alumni more than we might be. So we ask our coaching staffs to always send us updates, and then we have a specific person on our staff that she goes in and can change that in our database. But very similar, we do have the capability to pull some current information without doing formal data requests for specific things. But when it does become a larger project, it is something that definitely has to be approved. But we don't necessarily manage it. It's Advancement Central Giving does that for us.
Gotcha. And we have a question from Jennifer asking about the call to action button, which might be less relevant if it's just a thank you video. But if you are sending an update or sending an appeal, did you use the button, the call to action button, to drive donors to an impact or giving page? And kind of why or why not? What was the factor deciding whether or not there would be a call to action button there? And Beth, I'll let you take this one.
I'll be honest, we haven't used the call to action button in any of our specific campaigns for athletics, but for our day of giving recently, I know it was linked back to, the giving pages and whatnot, so you can get yourself there quickly. There's not really a reason why we didn't. I do think it's something we can look to then utilize moving forward.
Yeah, and I think for us, ThankView is just so new, not only for us, but for our donors, that we don't really want to like tarnish the ThankView just yet. So we want them to be excited to get that ThankView, just knowing that it's purely out of stewardship, engagement, that kind of thing. And then, once they're used to sending that, then we can throw that in there, and just as an additional way to ask for a donation.
And we have a question from Amy about, with the videos that are featuring students or coaches, who manages the responses? Who is the sender, which is the official thank you term, Amy? Who's the sender for those messages when you're working with student videos? And we touched on this a little bit, but I think it's texting and getting them either from the coach or directly from the students themselves. Do you have anything you want to add to that question, Haley or Beth?
Yeah, so I'm reading the question right now.
Yes, you are both panelists, have the power.
With those update videos, when a recipient responds to them, our Miami Athletic Fund email is the email that will receive those responses, and I oversee those. So with those updates, for example, I would then kind of just copy and paste all of the responses, because they come in individually, into one big email, and I'd send it to the sport liaison and the head coach so they could see, and I would keep the names of those, especially if they were like familiar or positive responses. You really want coaches to see that their update did make an impact, because we got a lot of positive feedback from those. We had a lot of responses. It was pretty surprising. And then when the sender name, we would just make it the head coach's name, but the email was our email. So the coach wasn't being bombarded with responses.
Yeah, and we have a question from Caroline here from Georgia College. Hi. She said, I apologize if you already covered this, but when are you sending out your updates to donors? How far back do you go? Just this past fiscal year's donors, or the current year fiscal donors, or even further? How are you pulling that info?
For us, we usually keep probably 3 fiscal years back for donors, just assuming that some people were giving because their kids were on the team at the time. So we just thought like 3 years was a good buffer to include them. And we usually roll in current parents as well, and former athletes of the program. So that's usually like our base. And then if the sport has tickets, we usually throw in their season ticket holders as well.
What about for Miami?
We, when it comes to donors, usually go back about 18 months. We are just in the first year of doing calendar years for athletic development. So we have been sticking to that 18 months just because of the change, and like some of the overlap could be a little, there might not cover everybody if you just did since January. So we've been doing that, but then we also always pull in the former student athletes from the program, and very similar to Haley, if it's a ticketed sport, pulling the tickets, we just try to include everybody that sport might touch.
And let's see. Jennifer said that they use the call to action button all the time, even in thank yous, especially to learn the impact of the gift. That is awesome. I am curious to know, Jennifer, if you want to throw it in the chat or in the Q&A, again, do you drive to a specific page every time? Is it different depending on the messaging? How do you decide what that call to action is going to be, especially for an update or a check-in video? I feel like that can get a little tricky as far as what are you driving them towards next. So I'd love to hear a little more about that in the chat or Q&A box. But we have another question here from Leslie. Have you received any type of feedback from donors, and what does that look like? And Haley, I'll let you take this one.
Yes, usually almost every time we push something out, we'll get at least one respond back. And sometimes they're donors that we're used to seeing. Sometimes they're new donors, which is exciting. We'll like start researching them right away. Like, who is this person? They're so thankful to get this. And I think that's the beauty of ThankView. It's touching people in new ways, and it's allowing us to connect with people in new ways. So the responses have always been positive. And again, this is a new platform for us. So people are just like really excited that we're thinking of them, and we're making them as personal as possible. So those are the ones that usually have those positive responses.
And Beth, I'll let you take it away as well. It was deceptive when I was like, and just Haley, but I would also love to hear what Miami donors are saying in response as well.
Back in the spring, when we did send those updates that you saw earlier from our field hockey coach, we had a lot of great feedback, and donors really expressed like their appreciation to hear about how our student athletes had been doing, and even how the coaches had been doing, because there's a lot of alumni and donors that know the head coaches personally, especially just with our it's a smaller school, not too small, but people come back and can have the opportunity to know the coaches. So there's a lot of people with those relationships that appreciated the update more than you might think, because it wasn't necessarily a personal message. So I would say those who do receive the personal messages, like we did recently, one of our sport administrators, for example, she's a volleyball alum, and on the day of giving, she donated to volleyball. And we had a personalized message created for her. And just last week in a meeting, she brought up how meaningful that was to her. And she said, this is, it was her not being an administrator saying that. So you could tell it really touched her and made, it makes people feel good.
That's amazing. And to like have her also be one of your colleagues as well. So, it's good getting that feedback from within your organization as well. So let me see. And Amy said, congratulations on all the responses. Jennifer asked, depending on the message, let's see, this is a response to that call to action question. Depending on the message that we send, we can change up the call to action. She said they might, oh, yeah, I'm gonna turn your mic. That sounds like a good plan, Jennifer. I'm gonna get through the rest of these questions, and then I'm gonna give you mic access to talk a little bit more about call to action strategy. And Amy, as an answer to the question that we'd asked Jennifer, also said, one way that they've used the call to action button as a stewardship next step is that they've sent it to donors, or they've sent donors to the YouTube link for virtual events. Because virtual events are recorded, they can send them to people, they can send people to those pages. Additionally, YouTube allows you to link to a specific moment in the video, so they can actually send them to a strategic moment of a virtual event. So that's a really good idea, Amy. Not only just linking to that general YouTube link, but a certain portion of that event, especially if it's an hour plus, like I might do with this webinar. I might link directly to this answer because it's awesome. We have one more question from Jamie. Is anyone doing anything specifically for homecoming? Oh, that is the very first question we asked. So I'm going to give mic access to Jennifer here and hear a little bit more about call to action strategy. Hold on just a minute, Jennifer.
Okay, can you hear me? Perfect.
Yeah, can hear you great.
So yeah, we really customize the call to action depending on what our message is. So I actually work in annual giving. I came onto this webinar because we're actually going to be assisting athletics, but we send out a bunch of thank yous for stewardship. So welcome to the Loyalty Society. The link will go to the webpage talking about their benefits, other things like that. We use it for appeals to giving pages. But if a school or college, we have 17 different schools and colleges. So if we want to do a thank you for a school or college, it can go right to the school or college page to learn more about what's going on at that school or college. But it's another great way to customize what your message is saying. So if you have the field hockey coach talking about the update, then the link could just go see what's going on, or check out our, the news from the team, and maybe it goes to their website page. It's just another opportunity, and I love it because the metrics in ThankView will show you how many people are going and basically converting. We watch it a lot of times for our conversions to gifts. And you'd be surprised because I did a big just strictly thank you, and we got gifts. So.
Oh, wow. And so that was the call to action was a soft ask in that instance?
Yep. It's it can just be a soft ask, like, thanks so much. Look at all the impact that you've done. If you'd like to help further, it's right there. It's really, I think it's almost a lost opportunity not to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that you kind of steered us right into my last question that came in earlier before the webinar as well. And that has to do with metrics. And I'm curious to know, both from you, Jennifer, who is now guest panelist here, what metrics are most important for you? If it's open rates, if it's replies, what's helping you accomplish your goals? Ultimately, it is donations, but what kind of engagement are you looking for when you look at that ThankView metrics page? And Beth, I'll let you kick us off here.
Yeah, I would say for us, it's open rates. We have found that our ThankView open rates are much higher than any other platform that we use. We also use iModules, that's for our newsletter, and that's through advancement. And then we also use Cheetah, which is part of Paciolan, our ticketing system, which we use that for our alumni newsletters, and then athletics uses that for everything else. But out of all three, ThankView always has the most open rates. So I think that has been what has just stuck out to us immediately. Just that more people are opening and looking at our emails when it comes from ThankView.
What about Haley at Townsend? What are you guys looking for as you put together a thank you campaign, or even across other different tools that you're using? What's most important for you guys?
Yeah, I think just to echo Beth, we're just interested in people who are interested in what we're sending them. And whether it's just acknowledging that, people like watching it, or seeing a new name that we're unfamiliar with, to then, do our own personal follow-up, or just, keep them on our radar a little bit.
And Jennifer, I'd love to hear when you touched on this a little bit, it's those CTA clicks, but are there specific other goals that you're looking for as far as open rates or replies when you look at that thank you metrics page?
So I do always look at the open rate, and by and large, our team is convinced, ThankView has the highest open rates. And so that case for us has kind of been come and gone. They really have high open rates, so I don't have to sell that to anyone anymore, and we're really thrilled with that. But now we watch the call to actions. I also watch how many people have opened it, stopped opening it, because now I'm looking at some type of follow-up strategy. If I can see people like opened it and watched it all the way. So now I'm trying to dig a little bit more into the metrics. But now for me, it's the call to action, because even if it is a thank you or an impact page, I want to see if I'm really engaging them versus rather just clicking it open.
Yeah, that's a great thing to start tracking. And I really love it's honestly, it's a little creepy, but I like that you can see when they start watching a video, when they watch 50% of the video, and if they finish watching the video, because that kind of lets you know, is it too long? Is it too short? Is it, are we actually getting people to watch the full video that you put so much time and effort into creating? So I think that's a really helpful metric as well. I'm gonna sneak back over to the Q&A box. Are there any final questions? We are creeping up on the 2 o'clock hour, and I want to be respectful of Beth and Haley and now Jennifer, our lovely guest panelists, their time. They've given us a full hour of a workday to talk about their campaigns, about their plans for the fall. So I really appreciate you both doing that. I'm not seeing any other questions. Feel free to drop them in the Q&A box or in that chat box. I have like kind of a fun one to end on, if anybody's interested to know. Beth, what tips do you have from working from home? Is it a chair? Is it a podcast? Like, what has kept you going through this?
For me, it's kind of just switching up where I am. Sometimes I don't have a standing desk at home, so I put it on my kitchen counter. I sit at my kitchen table.
Is it
if you have some
stacked?
Honestly, it's like the perfect height. I don't even need to like stack anything on it. But then even sometimes, if you have a more laid back day, like don't be afraid to even just like sit back on your couch sometimes. Just really just change it up. When I'm on the phone, I go outside and pace around my parking lot and stuff, just getting, fresh air and making sure you do take a break throughout the day, because it's sometimes hard to separate yourself when you're working from home and then you just have to shut your laptop and then go make dinner just 2 steps away. So just making sure you find time to separate your work and your life.
Yeah, that's really good advice. What about you, Haley?
Same thing as Beth. I think we've all kind of developed these things that are keeping us sane. But I did recently discover, if anyone has heard of it, there's something called Room Rater. And I guess it rates like the room that you're in. So it's just like a fun way to, make sure that you're either in a professional background or, I don't know, they just kind of rate you based on like, what kind of background you have. So just something different to switch up the noise. Yeah, just try to find ways to stay sane, I guess is my advice.
Yeah, it's trickier than it normally is. So Jennifer, I don't know about you. Do you have any tips for us to close us out? It is our last minute. Got a minute to give us your tips.
I would concur with the other panelists. I mean, I definitely try to switch it up. I need to get out of my office and go to the living room, but I also am very a routine person. So I get out for my walks, definitely have to get out in the morning and at lunchtime for sure.
Same advice here. Well, thank you all for joining us today. I can see people are already hopping on to their next meetings. So thank you, Beth and Haley and Jennifer, for taking the time to talk with us today. And thank you guys for attending. Let us know if you have any questions. You can keep the conversation going on our Facebook or LinkedIn community pages, or reach out to success@thankview.com for any questions that you have. And for those of us still here, there is an announcement coming up about athletic relief program that we're launching. So you are on the list to get emails about that, so stay tuned. But thank you guys. I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.